On this episode, we have our guest, David Gould, and we're going to be talking about religious legalism and when it becomes a problem. And we're also going to be talking about the church canons. Are the church canons hard laws we must follow, or are they suggestions? And how come we don't follow all the canons anymore in the church? For example, that one canon that says priests cannot go to hotels or use hotels when they travel. Why is it we don't follow that canon and other canons like that one anymore? David Gould?
So legalism and religion, the canon law of the Orthodox Church, and its malleability.
Mm-hmm.
The canon law of the Orthodox Church, and the reason we use the word canon is because that goes back to the Greek and has the sense in it of rule, but we have to be careful what we think rule is. Rule can be dominance. You can have a rule which is absolute. We have lots of those in our society. When you drive down the street, there's a stop sign. You have to stop. There's a red light, you need to stop. So rules provide order. Rules also are there to ensure a certain amount of safety. Rules are also in place within the religious world to protect people from particular kinds of circumstances. Canon, as rule, some Orthodox people have also always understood these as absolute and simply to be followed in lockstep. I would suggest that much more common understanding is that these are not suggestions, but a way of taking the measure of things. That is, it's that second notion of the definition of rule, as in ruler. You can take the measure of things. And we need to take the measure of things in order to understand whether some action has within it potentials to, whether an action inclines us to fulfillment and joy, or whether an action inclines us to disintegration and sin. But that's an act of discernment. Rules can't replace discernment. They're there to help you navigate, but discernment is always necessary. This goes back to so much of what we see in the Gospels with Jesus Christ. You know, Jesus Christ says, I did not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill the law. Well, what does it mean to fulfill the law? Well, it's to fulfill the purpose of the law, because the law can be used against its own purpose. The law was made, as Jesus Christ says to the Pharisees in that lovely account, where he's asked, if you are walking through a field on the Sabbath and you find a calf that has fallen in a cistern, are you supposed to take out the calf, or are you supposed to wait till the end of the Sabbath to take out the calf? And Jesus Christ's answer, by the way, is exactly the same as the Pharisees' answer. This often isn't understood by Christians, but we know much more about the Pharisees now than we used to because of the great manuscript find at Qumran. And so now we have a fuller picture of the Pharisees. And Jesus' answer and the Pharisees' answer was the same. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So that's a classic way of understanding this issue. Legalism is when the law becomes something that you are to serve instead of the law serving good human relationships and helping good human relationships flourish. So that's what I mean when I talk about the canon law of the church being available, since most priests in the Orthodox Church rarely look at the canon law of the church. Some bishops do periodically. But in a sense, it seems to me that is a kind of instrument in the church to help people take the measure of particular kinds of behavior and action and to discern whether it is appropriate or not. Obviously, in any code of law, it exists within a culture, it exists within a particular kind of society, and issues within that time and that society are going to influence how that law is shaped. And legal traditions, wherever we find them, exist within a larger tradition. And that larger tradition also has within it notions of change, needing to make a change in order to see that the real gift within the culture or the religion can continue to flourish. I know many people, you probably do too, within the Orthodox world that love Orthodoxy because they think it never changes. Well, that's just an indication that they've never read very much. There's been change, but how does the change come about? The change is intended to come about faithful to the tradition, but making it possible for the tradition to be understood in new ways, given new circumstances. So I would say, for example, that when in Orthodox liturgy we say the word man, that for my mother's generation meant human being. But for young people nowadays, it doesn't mean that. It means men. So in order to maintain the tradition, you need to change it. It needs to become an inclusive term. You need to speak about the human being or about men and women. So sometimes, in order to remain the same, you have to change. And so this is often where legalism becomes an issue. When religious communities or religious traditions become legalistic or moralistic, that's when they have mistaken the rich teaching about life, the rich teaching about discernment, the rich teaching about making careful judgments, and they've tried to codify it and make it abstract, put it in a law or a rule or a moral idea, and to insist that that is what you need to live up to. Well, my own sense is that moral principles are precious, and they're precious. All of us who've been parents, we seek to raise our children with certain moral principles because we want them to come to maturity without having done things that harm their soul or harm their body or make it difficult, harm their relationships, make it difficult for them to flourish. My sense is that legalism is useful and a good, but when it becomes your point of reference for what is holy, you are engaged in idolatry. Because holiness is about a relationship which is far beyond law. It's a relationship to the giver of life. It's a relationship to the stranger. It's a relationship which often transfigures simple legal ideas or moral principles. It seeks new life, whereas those legalisms and moral principles are usually about boundaries. It reaches across those. It brings something new into being.